and welcome to the Motorsport Coaching Podcast, sponsored by Motivate Training and Management. This is a podcast where we talk to drivers and industry experts to help you maximize your performances on and off the track. Let's get started with today's show. Hi guys, welcome to episode 23 this week. My guest is Mr. Josh Hunt. For those that don't know Josh, he's been racing motorsports forever really, but basically he started his motorsport career at the age of 11, moving to Europe at the age of 16. He has raced pretty much every single category in Australia, with his highlight racing the Toyota Atlantic Championship in the US in 2004. He's recently returned from Southeast Asia, where he placed third in the Asian Le Mans series and been setting up a young driver development program for karting. And now he is a co-owner of Volante Rosso, which has a team in the Porsche and GT Cup. So in this episode, we're going to talk to Josh about dealing with life overseas, about racing overseas, about coming back to Australia, and definitely setting up his team with his new team boss. So stay tuned. I hope you'll enjoy this episode. So welcome to the show, Josh.
Thanks for having me.
Now, after doing some research yesterday, I was amazed by how much racing you've done overseas and everywhere else.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride, you know. I think it all started at early ages, just coming through, but it all became quite serious as a job from about 16, 17. So Now being mid-30s, 16, 17 feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, it would, no doubt. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, Josh. Where did you start your career? Obviously in karting, and then what kind of categories have you raced throughout your time?
Yeah, I mean, karting was, like most drivers, was very important to it all. I started off very modestly. You know, we just did the club day stuff in like rookies, midgets back then, which is now cadets, then sort of made it through the national classes. And again, it was really just not necessarily a big push from mum and dad. It was just something to keep me occupied and on the straight and narrow. And it definitely did that. But then it evolved quite quickly when I got to about 15. I got a lot more serious about it. You know, puberty happened and then things started to develop in a way that definitely helped me deal with pressure, the physical side of it, and then it seemed like I blinked through a successful year here in Australia that then rocketed me off to Europe. Over there it was Formula A, which I guess I'm not sure what that equates to now in karting, but it was definitely the highest that we had here in Australia, and it was the second highest available to world karting, and that was huge to work for a factory team. That their main focus was based on going racing and not necessarily selling go-karts. So that was really cool because there was a lot of areas of development, both personally but also equipment-wise, that I wouldn't normally have learned. I had a great mentor and teammate in fellow Aussie Ben Horseman, who went over years and years ago, but he really took me under his wing and was definitely a school of hard knocks under Ben. You know, he made sure that I was doing all of the right things and none of the wrong things, and in a go-kart a lot. And there wasn't a whole lot of praise, but I definitely knew when I didn't get it right. And I think that really set me up for the hardships of what was ahead.
And what was some of those hardships?
Oh, I don't think there was anything specific, or it wasn't a difficult ride because I had so much determination to do it. Mm-hmm. So everything that I've done throughout my career, I wanted to. But being away from home as a 16-year-old was difficult. I didn't recognise it at the time because I was so determined to do what I was doing, and everything for me was just about racing. And I had people around me over there in my team boss, Nello Brancato and Ben, who really kept me busy and kept me in a go-kart. And when I wasn't in a go-kart, I was sweeping floors and working in the factory. So I really didn't have any time to get homesick as such. But that's definitely something that plays on you when you don't have that support network, because as a teenager, you never want to appear to be weak.
Mm-hmm.
And so you put on that tough face a little bit more often than what you would if you were at home and sleeping in your own bed and having mum do your washing and all those kind of things. And you know, even on that, the little things like laundry and food shopping and making sure my phone always had credit at such a young age was the little things I wasn't prepared for, where the racing side of it I'd had plenty of time to prepare myself for because it's what I always wanted to do.
Yeah, and what did you do to overcome that? You just obviously just jumped in the deep end and started doing everything, or you had Ben obviously just like did you live by yourself or were you living with Ben?
No, so I lived in a factory. So I work. The race team I was with was Kart, which isn't around anymore, but back then was quite successful. And their core business was aluminium ladders and scaffolding. So in a little corner of that quite large factory was the go-kart department. And above the offices was a little 2-bedroom apartment that I lived in there as the permanent resident. And then there was, you know, a constant flow of either scaffolding workers or go-kart mechanics and engine tuners that would come and stay there.
Oh.
So, yeah, I did have to do a lot of it myself. You know, I learned how to cook over there. I learned how to speak Italian. I learned how to do all of these things all at once. And, you know, I think with such a constant influx of new lessons to learn, I couldn't focus on how hard just one of them was. so it was sort of just, you know, bite down hard and get through it. But as I said, like, you know, it sounds like it was hard, but at the time it was all I ever wanted to do. So I was just enjoying the experience and everything that got thrown at me so much that you know, what might have been difficult just didn't appear that way at the time.
You just sucked it up, really?
Yeah, basically. And, you know, I mean, but that's the industry in a whole. It doesn't matter whether you're in Italy as a teenager or you're here in Australia as a, you know, 40-year-old looking at retirement. You know, it's always hard because you're constantly exposed in the game. Everybody's always judging you without knowing all the facts, and it's purely performance based. So, you know, few people remember all of the good things you do, or even one or two of the good things you do, but everybody remembers all the bad stuff. And you look at guys of late and you know, to pick two, you take Craig Lowndes. Now, he's undoubtedly one of the best that's ever come through, but he's had a tough year, and then he comes out and wins Bathurst this year. I mean, the guy has always been great. He's always known how to drive a car, but running fourth or fifth all of a sudden wasn't enough for everybody watching. And they're just a few of the things that you sort of deal with. And then, you know, Jamie Whincup, I mean, the guy's a guru. He's won more than anybody else, and he'll continue going on winning against, you know, the next young gun that comes through. But there's still those people out there trying to knock him down. And that's just a reality of any sport, but particularly this sport.
They're jealous. They're envious. They were all wanting to strive to be at the top.
Oh, absolutely. And then that's where you good guys will always be good. And it doesn't matter whether they're a football player or a race car driver. It's that mental toughness that makes the difference. Yeah.
So Josh, you have raced a few categories. So karting, Formula Ford, ChampCars, Porsche, sports cars, Geminis, Ferraris, GT. What's been your favourite category?
Oh, I think the stuff I did in the US was definitely a highlight. You know, as a kid, I grew up on the Gold Coast watching that IndyCar race, and that's all I ever wanted to do. So, you know, a lot of people say Ayrton Senna was the hero, and for me, that wasn't always the case. You know, for me, it was more the Paul Tracys, the Jimmy Vassars of the world that I looked up at, because that's where I wanted to be, and to be able to realise, you know, a fair way towards that dream. I didn't get there, but to be able to get so close and have your childhood heroes that end up mentoring you, then that's definitely a highlight. You know, the way they do things in the US is so different. It's so exposed in some areas where the way the pit stops are done, the way the garaging and everything's set up, you're out in the open, you're exposed to fans and exposed to the atmosphere, which is something really special that you don't get a lot of in most motorsport, especially modern day.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, they're so advanced in some of their methods and procedures, and the technology that goes into it all. And you can really see the way that Penske has influenced DJR since they've taken a big part in that team, and the way that Walkinshaw and United Autosport has really managed to add another element to Walkinshaw's effort, like that's huge, and it really shows that the different approach from what they do in the US does have its value. And to be a part of that was awesome, so that'll always be a highlight.
Sounds amazing. Did you get to go to lots of different tracks over there? What type of the tracks did you go to?
At the time, I was involved in the ChampCar Roadshow, not in ChampCar itself, but in Atlantics, which was the feeder series. So we did 12 of the 16 races that ChampCar did, and most of those being street circuit. We'd start off the year with Long Beach and end the year with Laguna Seca, and in the middle of that we had Toronto, we did Vancouver, the last Vancouver street race, which was really special, Montreal, and then to some of the biggest road circuits in the world with Road America, and all of the circuits had their own little unique qualities and demanded vastly different car setups and driving approaches. And I think that definitely helped me adapt to different cars throughout my career. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be the Toronto street circuit. Like that was really special, it's such an all-in street circuit with no margin for error, and, really rewarding when you do get it right.
Awesome. And so how long did you live that international race car driving lifestyle or compete internationally?
I like to think I never stopped.
You're back in now, so...
I am back in Australia, living in Perth, but some people would consider Perth international still.
True.
But no, I guess, that first stint was a good 5 years. And then since being back, there's been multiple trips to Europe, the US, quite a bit in Asia of recent times. And really, the dream was evolved from being a ChampCar driver to earning a living out of racing a car. And, to do that, I had to adapt, I guess, my goals to not being specific about driving a car, but particularly just driving a car and continuing to be in the seat so that you could stay relevant.
And how did you go around sponsorship? Was sponsorship different, gaining it over in the US to Australia? What's some of the differences that you've come across?
Sponsorship's always a tough thing to deal with in any sport, in any environment. It's no different in cars, and probably a little bit trickier in cars because, in a lot of professional sports, the sponsorship dollars go into the athlete and creating a living for them. For us in motorsport, quite often, the sponsorship dollars is going to just getting the car on the track. And if we do get a little piece of the pie as the athlete at the end, it's substantially smaller than what goes into the car and the team. And trying to explain that to companies and really extract the value from that is always tricky, but it's not impossible. Admittedly, when I was in the US, I was fairly lucky. I was the younger person in that older motorsport world where we were just being paid to drive. So I didn't need to worry about the sponsorship stuff. And we had people around there doing that for us. And that was great at the time. But admittedly, it was what ended up stopping my career in the US because I was young and I had a lot of faith in the people around me, and that faith wasn't misplaced. But the realities of business was that their attention had to go to other places that didn't include me. And at that point, I didn't know how to raise sponsors myself. And, so that US dream came to an end. Since then, I've been quite determined in learning how to do it. I still don't think I know how to do it. Sometimes you get lucky and you pull one through, but the main thing I've focused on is just being upfront and honest about it. The reality is sponsorship is going to be for some people and it's not going to be there for others in the value side of it. And there's going to be more no's than there are yeses, but once you do get that yes, it's regardless of the amount of money coming in, who it is, how it happens, is just putting as much effort into it as you possibly can to make sure that person comes out the other side happy and smiling and feeling like it was worthwhile. Because even if those deals or relationships or partnerships didn't extend on to the next race or the next season. It always helped me develop what I did for the next sponsorship that came along. So I don't think there's any pattern or, I definitely haven't found a formula. But yeah, it just seems to be, learning from what didn't work from the time before and adapting it to the next one.
Awesome advice there. Thanks for that, Josh. Now, for 3 years, you were the race team director with Energy Course Asia. What were you doing there? Is that when you first the last time you came back to Australia?
Yeah, so when I was over in Asia at the time doing some driving and coaching of different levels of drivers, and I, reconnected with my first go-kart boss over there in Mickey Panagata with Energy Course, and he asked if they were trying to expand into Asia and asked if I'd like to be involved in that. So, we took some time and ended up going over there and doing it, and it was really good. Asia is a completely different place altogether, and the thing that I had to learn the most about Asia was how you operate with different cultures, because the cultural aspect of it is so important, and it's something I'd not had to consider a lot in previous work situations. So that was really good. We got some great drivers through. I think I've got 2 of those drivers that I brought through there are now over in the US in both Formula 4 2000 and Star Mazda. A few of them quite a bit younger that have made their way through to Europe racing karts. One of them is back here in Australia doing quite well in juniors in AKC. So, we're, as a coach or a team owner, it's really nice to see that, your drivers that come through you from an early start go on and start realising their own dreams. And it's, you always like to think that you've had a part in that, no matter how big or small. So that was really good fun, and as it evolved, I had one of the fathers there who was really enthusiastic about it, had 3 kids of his own coming through. He ended up, buying that race team, and it's still going over there now, and it's cool to see that still operating and still pressing on. It was fun to get back into the go-karting side of things, but at the same time, getting married while I was over there and wanting to have kids myself, staying in Asia probably wasn't a reality. And now that we're back home, that side of it's a lot easier. And there's been some really cool things come out of, that experience over there and moving back to Australia and what's evolved with what I'm doing now.
And Josh, what do you think the differences are in the pathways to the top, I guess, between Australia, Europe, and the US? Do you think it's easier here in Australia? Do you think it's harder, to get to the main game, whether it's supercars or international racing?
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's easy anywhere. The one thing that I've learned, that any driver at the top of their game in any category is good, and that's been something that I've seen everywhere. It doesn't matter whether it's Formula V at a state level series or it's Formula One. It's the guys at the front of the field are always good, and it's normally opportunity or circumstance that has changed the path on the way through, because driving's not a natural skill that you get. It's something that's developed, and everybody at the top of their game has had to develop to get to that point. So I think, Australia's evolved a lot since I was coming through over here. The technology, the money, even the driver development and the physical development that a lot of the young guys are doing here is just phenomenal. And I remember when Mark Winterbottom in the early days started training with Essendon, that was a big thing. But now, with so many human performance companies around and involved in motorsport, it really shows that the attention to detail and the effort that all of these drivers are putting into it, and the teams. So, in answer to your question, no, it's definitely not easier here in Australia. If anything, it's probably harder, because there's so many young drivers coming through over here, and there's only one place for everyone to go, which is V8 Supercars. So that really narrows down the ability of being able to become a professional driver. I think you go overseas, it gives that olive tree kind of effect where there's so many branches that you can go off onto. And, And you look at guys like Josh Bird and Scott Andrews, who did a little bit of racing back here, but for the most part are probably unknown back here in Australia. But then over in Asia and Europe, these guys are at the top of the Le Mans prototype sort of racing in LMP3. Josh has just started in Chinese touring cars, which is an extremely hard place to get into. You know, Scott Andrews won at Spa a few weeks ago in LMP3 in European Le Mans. And these are guys, you know, that just, I guess, had the balls to look outside the square and tried something different. And it's definitely coming back their way.
That's a good follow-on to my next question there, Josh. So you just mentioned about Josh Burden doing the LMP3. He currently became the director of LMP3 Cup in Australia. What actually is that category, and where will it be racing, and when does it start?
Yeah, so that's I'm one of the directors behind LMP3 Cup Australia, and it's something that we're really excited about. You know, LMP3 isn't new. It's been around since 2015. It's an initiative by French car club ACO, which is the owners of Le Mans 24-hour Asian Le Mans and also World Endurance Championship. And they essentially started the LMP3 category as an entry point to the prototype world of racing. We're really excited about it coming to Australia because we've seen so many drivers, both young professionals or young aspiring professionals to gentleman racers who are travelling all over the world to race LMP cars. So to bring that back to Australia was definitely something that we were quite keen on. And, you know, it's been good that where we saw the interest lie has proven in the interest that is registered already. You know, like we've had a few milestones set to us by CAMS to become a category, and the first one was having 6 registered entries by the end of October, which we well and truly achieved. Now we're pressing on to get a total of 12 to be a category, and then we go from there. So we know that there's 2 cars already on their way to Australia, which will be available for test drives shortly. And hopefully it can become something really cool. It'll, you know, predominantly be around the 1 hour racing of 2 drivers, you know, which follows the ACO Sprint Cup rulebook. And that was something that was quite important to us also, to align ourselves with a company like the ACO to give it credibility off the bat. So it'll essentially use their rulebook and really follow the paths that have already been set by European Le Mans, what's happening in the US with IMSA LMP3 and also Asian Le Mans.
So you're looking for a 2020 kickoff, or you're aiming for 2019?
No. So 2019. So we'll have cars on track. Now our series needs to fit within the Asian Le Mans series, and the Asian Le Mans series runs over Christmas, so it's a late November to February series. So we'll be working within those dates so that not only the Asian Le Mans guys can come down and run in our category, but also so our guys can go up to Asia and run in the longer distance Asian Le Mans category. And so much so our winner from the series wins an entry into the Asian Le Mans. Worth about $40,000 US. So yeah, we're really excited about the partnership with ACO and the potential of sending more Aussie drivers overseas and maybe even to the LMP3 Road to Le Mans race that happens as a support to the Le Mans 24-hour.
Yep.
And seeing if we can get more Aussies on the podium.
Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, Josh, you mentioned that you've moved back to Perth, you're settling down, got married, have got a baby on the way. So now you're moving into circuit motorsport management role. What does CMM do? Yeah,
so essentially Circuit Motorsport Management has been my trading company for a while. It started life as JHR Motorsports back in early 2000s when I went to the US, and now it's evolved more as a company that can encompass not only my driving activities as a driving entity, but more so as a coach, as a mentor, and any events that we do. We also use it as a company to operate and manage all of the sponsorship programs that come through, so that any sponsors that get involved in us have comfort in that where they're dealing with a real company that they're investing into and is managing the process. And within that company, we've got a chartered accountant, we've got an events producer, and all the key elements that we really need to execute a really successful sponsorship program. And so that's basically the background of CMM.
Awesome. And in your spare time, you're also the director of Volante Rosso. Is that how I say it?
Very close, Volante Rosso, yeah.
Yeah. With Chris, you can say his last name. But how did that partnership come about? Chris Papadopoulos?
Yeah, well done, Chris Papadopoulos. Yeah, so, I mean, Chris is a bit of a, oh, hopefully not as unknown now, but he's a bit of an unknown treasure. You know, this guy has been he ran docking racing for a while when Will Power and Will Davidson were over there. He's then been involved in Renault F1 right back into the Alonso era through to the Kimi era, you know. So Chris is forgotten more than most people know, and I'm very, very honoured that he's partnered with me, and we're having a lot of fun. You know, Volante Rosso is really, you know, it's a race team that we've been spitballing over for a few years. Actually, you know, the idea started when I was over in Asia, and it's something that Chris and I are both really passionate about. You know, we feel that through my time in the US and Asia and what Chris knows from his time in Europe, we've got some good approaches and some good things that we can bring to the game. And, you know, this is our chance to try and do that. You know, we've really opened it up, or Chris has been working out of Volante Rosso as an engineer for a couple of guys in Australian GT, being Peter Hackett, Dom Story, and Jake Foraker, and Tony Bates, and had some huge success in the GT field. Also in Super 2 with Brenton Grove this year. And now our entry in the Carrera Cup with Volante Rosso is our first entry as a race team. Mm-hmm. And it's been a lot of fun, you know, like the thing with Carrera Cup is all of the teams and all of the people involved are at the top of their game and doing an exceptional job. You know, with Carrera Cup, you can't cut any corners, you can't fudge your way through, because it's just down to getting everything right, from not only the car preparation and the engineering of it, but also the driving side of it. And I think that, well, I know that we're very happy in what we've been able to learn this year. Our approach now, our intention, this whole thing was definitely a 3-year program from the beginning, you know, and what we've managed to learn and tick off our to-do list in the first season has probably, you know, exceeded our expectations. You know, as far as our procedures, we wanted to, you know, trial a few different stuff, because our intention is to expand and be running more cars, and not too big so it gets out of our control, but big enough so that we can be identifiable as one of the top teams. And this year was really important for that. And as I said, you know, we've managed to really exceed those expectations of what we've been able to achieve. You know, there were glimpses throughout the year which really showed, you know, the pace of what we had. But, you know, in all honesty, I think what the team was able to achieve was not really displayed by what I was doing with the car on the track. You know, I was making lots of mistakes. I was a little bit rusty, to say the least. You know, I decided a couple of years ago that I wasn't going to drive anymore, and really just stepped away from it and hadn't put a helmet on or looked at a race car in that time. You know, so to get back into such a highly competitive category and be able to sort of be thereabouts as a single car entity, I was pretty happy with it. But yeah, definitely plenty of areas that I need to clean up going into next year's season.
And did you come across any challenges being a co-owner and a driver?
Oh, I encountered a lot of challenges this year, you know, personally, but not specifically, no. You know, Chris does such an exceptional job of running a race team. There's less for me to do on a race weekend. You know, my involvement's really between the races and the corporate side of it. So the operations of the race team, my involvement there is as a driver. Mm-hmm. And having such good people around you and such faith in those people, then there's not a whole lot of stress on that side of it, because you know everything's being done as well as it can possibly be done. So in answer to your question, no, I didn't find any challenges there. You know, as we grow into more cars, then that might become more of an issue. But if it ever does, you know, the main focus in this is for Volante Rosso as a race team, not Josh Hunt as a driver. So, yeah, you know, if all's going well, then I can, you know, the time will come where I can step back and I won't be racing, and I can stand there next to Chris in the pits as a proud, weird dad of a race team.
And what are VR plans for next year, for 2019?
Well, as I said, we're committed to Carrera Cup. I think it's, probably no doubt, it's the best support category that we've got in Australia. Not just for, top level guys to find a home and keep competitive, but also for young guys coming through and using the stepping stone to the next part in their career, which has easily been displayed by Jackson Evans, Dylan O'Keefe and Jordan Love. Those guys have done such an awesome job and definitely made it a few of the old guys, including myself, step up and try a few things that we probably haven't had to do before. So, yeah, our commitment's there. We would like to run more cars. Ideally, if we could get to 3 cars, I think that's a good number. If add another Pro Class car and one Pro-Am car to the fold, then that would really be exciting and fulfill what we would like as a model. I think, to have, definitely in our situation, to have a guy in the car as a number 1 driver who is in the car as a professional driver and got his heart set on going and winning races and being a Carrera Cup champion would be a huge asset to us as a team, to have that driving force behind it, because, in all honesty, I don't think that I've got that in me anymore, through Fred focuses and different things like that, but I could definitely be a really good number 2 driver. So that's the way we'd probably like to develop it. And of course, the Pro-Am part of it is quite important too, because you need that person coming through with a fresh set of eyes that probably looks at things a little bit differently than a professional driver does.
Yep.
And ask the questions that aren't being asked. So that's what we'd like to see. And, we're making good steps towards achieving that. So hopefully in the coming month or 2, we can tie those details up and be lining up with 3 cars next year.
So from a team perspective, Josh, is that what you're doing now? Like, what happens from a team or within a team after the category's finished? Do you have a week's holiday and then you start planning again for 2019, or there's no rest for the wicked?
There's definitely no rest for the wicked. No, I mean, this is probably when we start getting busy. We've got a lot of things to do. We've got to, from our point of view, we've got to compile all of the data that we've collected this year, figure out what's useful, what's not, and prioritise all of that so that we can start off technically a really good year next year. We've got to evaluate all of our staff that we use this year and, be able to place the right personalities together, because it's, it comes back to the old thing of a team of champions isn't always a champion team. And, you've really got to manage the personalities within the team. And I think we've got a really good group of guys that have developed together this year, but, we can shuffle them around into different structures and different places that'll make it even better next year. And then, of course, the drivers. We want to make sure it's not just about getting the best driver that we possibly can in the car. It's about getting a driver, who wants to be a part of what we're trying to do, and to add to that, trying to get someone that fits that mold and is either good with the sponsors that we can bring to the table for them, or has a good sponsor pool themselves, because, the unfortunate reality of motorsport is it costs a lot of money and somebody's got to pay for it along the way. And as a race team, we can only bring so much to it. So there is a component where the drivers need to bring something.
Yeah.
At this point in time, in a perfect world, then that won't be the case, and we can start paying drivers. But right now, that's not where we're at. And then at the same time, be able to do a really good job for our Pro-Am driver that we take on, because these guys are the guys that do have different focuses. They are normally very time poor and exceptional business people that have put themselves in a position to be able to have this kind of money aside that they can go racing. And the fact that they want to go racing and not go play golf or go and buy a big boat is great, because it just fuels our passion. So we want to make sure that not only we get the right person that we can do the best job for and fits in with our team environment, but also, we can do a really great job for them in them achieving their goals for doing this in the first place.
Awesome. Sounds very exciting for the new year. Can't wait to see what happens. And so, Josh, to finish off your busy day, you also do some project management work. Can you share with us what that work is, or is it still top secret?
No. Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been lucky enough to be taken in on a different fold in the property world. and still be linked to the motorsport world, which is great too. You know, there's a new track proposal for Western Australia that I've been working on since coming back to Australia, and it's been a lot of fun. You know, to go through the process of designing or not sorry, I'll rephrase that, not designing, but working with our track designers in the UK to come up with that, working with CAMS, FIA, Motorcycling Australia, and all of the key stakeholders there to come up with a venue that's something pretty special, that's going to really be good for everybody and suit what Western Australia needs at this point in time. It's been an awesome opportunity for me. It's made me look at another side of business, and I think definitely helped in the approach that I've taken with my other interests also in motorsport. So that's been a lot of fun. You know, the job itself is probably fairly similar to team management. You know, you're working the deadlines, managing budgets, and keeping everybody happy along the whole way along, including levels of government. So that's been a lot of fun, and you know, I can't wait to see that come about and have another circuit over here in Western Australia.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic for the sport. But I do have another question. When do you sleep?
When my wife tells me to. She's the boss, and she manages me very, very well. But no, I'm you know, I'm lucky. I've got such an awesome life away from work that, you know, I want to do both of them equally as much. And I, as much as I enjoy the motorsport and the work and keeping my mind active, you know, just something as simple as going for a walk along the beach with my wife and my dog is probably my favourite thing to do. And it's important to have those resets and times away from both, because it really makes you appreciate them both when you're in there and extract the most out of the time you're spending on them. So I'm very grateful to have both.
You are very lucky. Now, Josh, do you have any advice for drivers that are wanting to take, I guess, that next step into their career and looking to join a team like VR if they've never done that before? Like, how do they approach the team owners or, you know, really engage in start those conversations?
I really thought, well, I can't speak for the other teams, but I mean, just pick up the phone. You know, where everybody's still a person and everybody's goals are temporarily aligned at some point in time, you know. So never die wondering, pick up the phone, do your research and make yourself known. You know, like, obviously the easiest way to get into the race team is come with a budget and, you know, go racing. But even if the budget isn't there, you know, like, these teams as much as at all levels, whether they're at the front of the grid or the back of the grid, they've got to have cars on the grid, because that's how they, you know, they pay salaries for the guys in the workshop, keep the doors open. You know, the money doesn't always come in from the drivers. Sometimes the teams have to get proactive and go and find that. You know, if you can start building a relationship early with these teams, you know, it just advances all of the potential for getting in the car at that point. And you know, being a race driver, what you do in the car is the easy part. You know, it's everything that you do outside of the car that determines the good guys from the guys that probably don't make it. So that would be my advice, is just pick up the phone and make yourself known and build those relationships from an early stage.
Yeah, and if someone's wanting to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do it? Is it through LinkedIn or through one of the email addresses?
Well, I'm pretty contactable after being in Asia, because you've got to be. So, but no, my emails go 24 hours a day. You know, so I operate everything centrally out of my Circuit Motorsport email, which is josh@circuitmotorsport.com.au. And yeah, so definitely emails. Simple enough, and yeah, I try to get back to them. Or, funnily enough, as much as I hate social media, which isn't a good thing for an athlete, but I do, you know, Facebook's always a good way to get in touch with people when you don't have that finer detail of contact.
And that's at Josh Hunt Racing. Is that the best one, or through the VR one, Volante Rosso?
No, so it's yeah, Either probably for the race team side of it is Volante Rosso Facebook or Instagram, and or our website. We've got contacts for all of that. Anything LMP3 related, the same through those two, and all my personal stuff. I quite often use Facebook as a way to get in touch with people that I don't have their number or their contacts. And the reality is not everybody wants to hear from you. But the ones that do will definitely get back to you.
Well, I'll put all those links into the show notes. Thanks very much for your time today, Josh. It was definitely awesome to hear a different perspective from someone being a team owner and going through Asia and America and coming back to Australia and continue their growth in the actual industry. So thank you very much for sharing your journey with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was good fun.
No worries. My final question is, what is your favorite racetrack in the world? Obviously, you've been to many.
Fuji.
Fuji?
Yep, Fuji. Hands down the best.
Okay, tell us why, for those who haven't been there.
Well, anyone that hasn't been to Japan, you need to, because it's incredible. But no, it's just massive. Like, it's such a big circuit. It's very technical to produce a lap time because the corners are quite long radius. So you're in there for a long time, and you've really got to be on your game and hit your points. And then with the backdrop of Mount Fuji, which admittedly isn't always visible, even though it's so close, is something pretty special. So yeah, I'd have to say Fuji.
Well, thanks again, Josh. And hopefully we can have you on next year to see on the progression of Volante Rosso and what's been happening with the team development.
Sounds good. Thanks, Belinda.
Thanks, Josh. Bye. Well, thanks everyone for listening to this week's show. I really hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. Now, remember, all the show notes with the links and the specials mentioned in today's show are available over at motivatetraining.com.au. If you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could head to iTunes or Stitcher, type in Motorsport Coaching, subscribe, and leave us a review. Each week, I'll read them out, and you'll go into a monthly draw to win a fantastic prize. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at motivatetraining.com.au or head over to our Facebook page at Motivate Until next time, take care.